Hello, my name is Cywolf, and there is now some new news about the FNaF movie, and it is absolutely huge. It seems like the FNaF movie might be a bit more lore-heavy than we thought. Before we hop into the video, I just wanted to quickly say that only 8% of the people who watch my content are actually subscribed, so if you enjoy the content, why not consider subscribing to the channel? It really helps it out, and you'll get notified of future uploads. I'm gonna go ahead and read the post out loud. Bad news about the FNaF movie. Hi everyone, before we get to the bad news concerning the state of the Five Nights at Freddy's movie, I wanted to share a brief history of the FNaF screenplay. It's been a long road, so let's take a look at some of the screenplays that have come and gone over the years in no particular order. Or feel free to skip to the end really quick to see the bad news, then come back and enjoy the list. Some of these came from big studios, some from big directors, some from me, and some from other hired writers. I gave the screenplays a name, and I'll include a brief synopsis as well as what ultimately led to each screenplay being rejected. Let's get started. The F screenplay. Basic setup. Group of teenage troublemakers break into Freddy's. Chaos ensues. Problems. Although a pretty basic setup, there were a lot of odd choices here, which only got weirder as the story continued. The story ended with our protagonists in a secret underground animatronic factory that was designing robots for the government. Verdict. What the heck? Strayed too far from source material. Tossed. The Plushies Take Manhattan screenplay. Basic setup. Plushies Take Manhattan. Problems. Plushies Take Manhattan. Verdict. Burned with fire. The Random Charlie screenplay. Basic setup. Charlie and friends sneak into Freddy's after hours to retrieve a lost toy. Problems. Although sharing names of familiar characters from the series, these characters had nothing to do with their game and book counterparts, so while featuring familiar elements of the games, it seemed too loosely based on the game, and lost a lot of its impact because of it. Verdict. Felt like a random bag of FNaF elements with no real stakes. Meh. The Silver Eyes screenplays. Basic setup. Kira and I both worked on 3 versions of a Silver Eyes screenplay over the course of about a year, trying to find the right approach to the story from the first book. Problems. These were the first attempts I made myself to write a screenplay after realizing it was going to be difficult to find someone else who understood the lore well enough to do it. Unfortunately, it also meant these screenplays suffered greatly from my inexperience at writing. Even Kira, with her writing expertise, couldn't save them. Verdict. Although these had some good elements, I ultimately decided to focus on making a screenplay from the games and not from the books. The Pawn Shop screenplay. Basic setup. A kid who watches after a pawn shop finds trouble when an animatronic is brought in. It turns out Freddy's had been robbed and the animatronics were taken to different locations for sale. The other animatronics come to retrieve the one at the pawn shop and the kid and his friends get roped into adventure. Problems. A creative approach, but felt a little too much like a boy and his animatronic. Too much after-school adventure, not enough horror. Verdict. Seemed like a good idea at the time. The Cassidy screenplay. Basic setup. Diving deep, this screenplay packed in a lot of lore, following the story of Cassidy. Problems. Spanning multiple time periods, following multiple characters, and featuring lore from multiple games, this was pretty saturated to a fault. It may have been satisfying to most hardcore fans, but it would have left the majority of people confused and lost. Hey wait, maybe this was the most accurate screenplay. Verdict. Ultimately more of a visual encyclopedia than a movie, this just wasn't satisfying even to me. Out. So this is one of the most interesting ones. There's some more that I'm going to go over, but this is one of the most interesting because it does confirm that Cassidy is hugely important to the game lore, so much so that the character Cassidy is involved with multiple games in a pretty big way. So whether they're Golden Freddy or someone else is unknown, but we at least have confirmation that Cassidy is hugely important. The Misfit Kids screenplay. Basic setup. Single mom brings her kid to a new town, kid finds Freddy's, hilarity ensues. Problems. One of the problems in creating a modern day story with an old Freddy setting is finding a way to connect the protagonist to the restaurant, finding a reason for them to be there, and finding a reason for them to stay. The problem here is that the reason for this kid to go to Freddy's and have misadventures was too contrived and too forced. Verdict. Not a bad setup, but it just didn't work. If I don't care about the characters, then there's a good chance no one else will either. Pass. This was going to be the screenplay for a while because it didn't have any serious flaws. I ultimately decided it just wasn't good enough though. The Ghost Trackers screenplay. Basic setup. A group of amateur ghost trackers sneak into the abandoned Freddy's. Problems. Although a very common sense setup for this sort of movie, the problems again arose about how to give these characters a connection to Freddy's itself. What ended up happening was too much of the story went to their own backstories and their own hardships, and it took the spotlight away from the story of Freddy's. Verdict: a stronger connection between the protagonist and Freddy's was needed. Lesson learned. The insane screenplay. Basic setup: another Ghost Tracker variation. This one involved the Funtime animatronics, underground ball pit tunnels, and a marionette out for revenge. Problems: as some of the other screenplays ventured too far into adventure, this one went too far into action. Verdict: too all over the place with too many characters doing too many things. The Mike screenplay. Basic setup: this makes sense. Why didn't I think of this before? Problems: actually, this is a good mix. It has the best pieces from all the previous screenplays. Not really any problems here. All the right characters, all the right motivations, all the right stakes. Verdict: yeah, we're going with this one. It's fun, it's scary, and it has a great central story. Oh right, so on to the bad news. The bad news is that there won't be any more screenplays to add to this list since we're officially making the Mike screenplay. Filming starts in spring. Now, I'm the most excited about how the movie's gonna turn out and what the story's gonna be, because by Mike, he's definitely talking about Michael Afton. So the story that it seems like we've known so far from the games about Michael is that he accidentally killed his brother during FNaF 4, and then that ultimately led to him going to the different locations, seemingly trying to fix what William did, and then he got scooped, and it seems like during FNaF 1, he was having nightmares out of guilt for his brother. And it seems like this movie is going to delve more into his motivations for why he's doing this, and, you know, what he thinks about what happened to his brother, and what he thinks about William, and all sorts of stuff like that, and this is going to be probably pretty heavy for the lore. Anyways, yeah, really exciting stuff. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more content, please leave a like and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, and I'll see you later. Have a good one.